Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah, and in this episode, we sit down with Ekat. Ekat is an incredible magician, YouTuber, cardist, and so much more. This episode was a ton of fun because we talk about everything. We talk about reviewing magic on YouTube. We talk a little bit about unconventional.fun. We talk about marketing, magic, partnerships with companies, and so much more. This was a wonderful episode. I had a blast with Ekat on this episode. I've had a blast with Ekat over the past years watching her material, and I had a blast when she was at our last unconventional.fun and tore the house down. So I'm so excited to share this episode with all of you. I think you're going to love it as much as I did. Here it is, a wonderful conversation with the one and only Ekat. Ekat, how are you?
I'm good. Yourself?
I am doing very well, very excited to chat with you. You know, I followed a lot of your stuff online for a while. I saw things on YouTube, on Instagram, and obviously we're very close geographically.
Yeah.
And then you just brought the house down at unconventional.fun. You just did such an amazing job, and you were, the talk of the convention. So I was like, let's do this. Let's talk about it and talk about some of the things that kind of really blew my mind. So pumped to chat with you about magic and content and everything in between.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for this chat.
Of course. Let's kind of go back. Actually, before we go back to all the way at the beginning, let's talk about the pandemic right now. Mm-hmm. We are kind of coming to the end. Canada is like, the echo of the US with respect to it coming to an end. So we're kind of following in their trails once they all get vaccinated. But we kind of just endured 18 months, 20 months of the pandemic. And for some people, it was incredibly difficult where everything was live and in person and everything disappeared. For some people, they have spent the last more or less decade living and creating and doing and making online. And it actually maybe had some positives, obviously, as well as some negatives. So I'd love to hear first kind of like, how was the last 18 months overall in terms of how it affected, what you were up to?
Yeah, I feel like I've always been prepared for the digital world and creating content prior and performing virtually prior to the pandemic. So it wasn't big of a shock to take in. However, I have a job and business as well. And so when people ask me, what do you do? I usually say it's like the 3 M's. I'm a mom, I'm a magician, and I'm a marketer. So in my marketing career, I've done a really major move at the end of 2019, literally December 2019. I had resigned from a position at L'Oreal, and I had been with them for almost a decade. So big collaboration. Basically, they've taught me almost everything I know about business. And there was an opportunity for me to relocate to the US actually with that organization. And I had chosen my family. And I've always said, if there's a really big decision to make, I will always choose my family. And so that was one big decision. And I felt really down, January, February, because I had made that big decision and I was questioning myself whether that was, the right decision to make. And 3 months after the pandemic hit, so really I was in a financially, I would say, unstable predicament at that point because I was back, as an entrepreneur, back to my own business, doing that full time until I figure out what I wanted to do next, whether I wanted to continue engaging with organizations or continue being an entrepreneur and working within the startup environment. So I had tried on my own startup environments, and then I realized how much I miss marketing products. And so I decided after 10 months within the pandemic to look at an opportunity at an organization again. And I've entertained a few companies. And then just in September 2020, I found this awesome organization that's not a startup, that's not a billion-dollar company, but really in between, where I'm able to be entrepreneurial. I'm able to take a leadership position in marketing, and I'm able to help them transform their business into what I call marketing at the digital age. So I'm doing that right now and still juggling my own business in magic and being a mom. But I've never been as excited as I'm now about marketing at another company, because and a lot of people ask me, you obviously had the opportunity to just keep going on your own. And I'm like, but on my own, I can't hire 20 people under me. Like I can't, like there's certain things I can't do. I don't have $1 million budget, you know?
Mm-hmm. And you know what? It's fun, you know, to be able to, you know, we get to play, you know, on our own, which is kind of like a small version. Sometimes it's like, you know, like we think we're running this like big business. It's like, you know, we're playing house a little bit when we compare it to some of these big machines. And, you know, it's amazing that you can send it off to a department, you know, of people to take care of something, you know? So, that's really, really wonderful. That's really incredible. Let's zoom all the way back, to how we got started, and then we'll make it back to, you know, the sure. pandemic and where we are now, which is incredible. Let's go back to the beginning. How did you get started in magic?
Wow. So I was born in Russia and only immigrated. I'm saying only, but it's been a while ago. I was 8 years old when my family immigrated wow. to Canada. And the reason being is one of my sisters, because we're a big family, has a genetic illness and she can't eat most foods. And there's a specific food being produced in North America for these type of illnesses. And that didn't exist in Russia. So we're like, for her own kind of health benefits, it's going to be easier for her to grow up in North America. And she was like just a baby at the time. So big risk for my family. They made the move. We came here. But back in Russia, the circus was like one of my favorite entertainment venues. My parents would take me all the time. And I remember being in the waiting line and there was a strolling magician. That's why I really have a special place for close-up magic in my heart, because that's the first thing that I saw, right? So that magician, sort of dressed more like a clown, comes up to me and makes a silk vanish. Very basic trick, right? But I could see his hands empty. I could not see a thumb tip in there. I was blown away. But my first question after he performed that was, how did you do that? And I think a lot of people have that reaction of curiosity, of being a bit frustrated by the fact that they don't understand the secret behind. And he mentioned that you would have to join the circus to find out. So
what a good answer. That's
I'm like, okay, I have a target now. I need to join the circus. Obviously I was a kid, so it's a silly thought, but we all grow up maybe wishing we were superheroes or things like that. So for me, it was working at the circus and becoming a magician. And the first step was to learn. I don't know the best English word to say, self-taught juggling act. Yeah. So I started to learn how to juggle, and that carried me through to my transition to Canada. I didn't know the language. I would try to make friends by juggling. They would be entertained for 2 minutes or 5 minutes max. And they would be like, okay, this is boring. What else can you do? And I think my mom saw this and bought me a magic kit early on. But again, my English or French was really poor at the time. And instructions that are purely written are very difficult when it comes to magic. So that magic kit had 100 tricks, all written instructions. The props were really low quality. I just saw this, was a bit disappointed and left it there. So I gave up at that point on that dream of becoming a magician. And as I learned languages quite quickly, I actually wanted to get into journalism at that point. So I'm like, yeah, I quite like communicating, creating, but I was at that time still very, very shy, reserved, introverted. So fast forward to when I was 16 years old, there was a boy that liked me. Like I liked him too. He showed me a card trick and I asked the same question as I usually do. How did you do that? And with no hesitation, he explains to me, and he was actually performing a classic pass, and the card kept jumping on top. So he mixed it in with an ambitious card routine. Love that. He's like, I learned it from this online website called Illusionist. I have the DVD. I could just let you borrow that DVD if you wanted to take a look at it. I'm like, that's quite
what a wild story.
Quite awesome. Didn't last long, that kind of friendship / relationship. He was getting into, we were both doing this health science course in college. And he's like, I really need to focus on medicine. I really want to, become a doctor. So yeah, that's it. So he essentially broke up with me at that point, and I was a bit mad. And I decided that my revenge is going to be to go through this DVC and become a better magician.
Wow, that's
So,
a great
yeah.
story. Oh my
Not a
goodness.
lot of people know this, but yeah, so that was my first big rejection, I would say. I don't like being rejected, but no one does. But most of the time it's men getting rejected, right? In this kind of environment. So in this case, I felt I got rejected, decided to strike back by becoming better. I
And I
noticed very
assume you
cool.
never gave him the DVDs back. You never got
No,
those.
no, I
No,
kept
of course
everything.
not.
No,
Yeah.
why would
Yeah.
I?
No.
I noticed that I had a tendency to complain while watching the DVD about the size of my hands, about how difficult it was. It was the Ninja series from Illusionist. I thought they were a little bit weird, the folks in the instructional tutorial. Like, it was like not my style. I'm like, but okay, I guess that's magic. I watched quite a bit of David Blaine, and I could see the same tricks that he was performing on that DVD. I'm like, okay, so it's not that crazy after all. Let me just pay more attention, avoid anyone's style, or like just eliminate anything that's not sleight of hand, and kind of add my own twist. But very quickly, I learned all the material in those DVDs, and I started to, at any chance I would get, perform to people to try to get that rhythm in, because you could look very awkward when you're learning a trick and trying to test it right away. So any opportunity I would get, I would test the tricks on someone. And at that point, I had started also my YouTube channel of me recording how I progress in magic and learning those things. And I remember when I had 4 subscribers and the kind of comments I would get. But the thing is, when I had 4 subscribers, I also had the tendency to be like, okay, I learned the classic pass, let's say, and then I would post a tutorial of the classic pass. But like at 10 subscribers, I remember someone told me, like, that's not the right route. Don't do that. Just upload street magic and performances. So I decided to listen to that advice and do less education and more performance. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. I think that's kind of a great way in, because first of all, most stories with how people got into magic are the same, and it's not that one. So that was awesome.
It was almost that one, but then there was a twist.
Yeah, you left up. You're like, this is boring. I don't like this stuff. But it is really interesting that, I've heard a lot of people express that they opened a magic kit and there was some level of disappointment, not necessarily with the production quality, but like, we kind of do believe that there's something there to magic. And when you get like a plastic kit with like some toys and stuff, whatever, like, it really does ruin it. It does make you say,
Yeah.
maybe not. Maybe I'll go back to juggling. That actually like seemed like it was a lot more fun. Really, which is really interesting, and especially how juggling will maybe play a role in cardistry, which we'll talk about in a second. Let's start with the YouTube thing, because I think anybody who has gotten into magic in the last 20 years has benefited and participated in YouTube and magic, and that's like a true statement, hard one to get around, like I think it really is, it's really the truth. And everybody has a different opinion about what you can do, what you can't do. And I know recently you shared a video sharing your thoughts on it because of what I imagine was a kerfuffle or whatever, which usually happens when a toe is stepped on or somebody is offended or whatever. And I'd like to commend you that if somebody goes and takes a look at your channel, it is quite a bit of education, and quite a bit of education geared towards people trying to figure out how to do something, for the first time. There's expert stuff, there's advanced stuff, but there's a lot of education helping people do things in magic and cardistry. And I think there's a lot of negativity in magic about teaching on YouTube. And obviously there's quite a bit of nuance here, but I'd love to know your take. What do you feel about teaching magic on YouTube, about tutorials? What's right? What's wrong? A lot has changed over the past decade. How do you feel?
It's a very tough question to answer, and I get a lot of questions till now about what's ethical, what's unethical, what should they do? Because a lot of people want to start their YouTube channel and are asking me for advice, given that I've been on YouTube for over a decade. I don't have all the answers, but I have the legal advice that I could give, and then the what's the right thing to do advice to give. But at the end, I don't judge people on whatever route they take, because at the end of the day, as a content creator, it's difficult to consistently create content, whatever it is you choose to put out there. So I have respect for anyone that puts themselves out there and creates content. It is not easy. And it's easier to pass a judgment on someone who is hustling. Actually, a lot of folks that are teaching or doing things that people maybe don't agree with have a certain level of success. And I think there's some jealousy that comes into some of the judgmental comments that are passed. But the incident with one of my videos that taught 5 easy magic tricks was really an example that I wasn't prepared for, because a lot of my friends were also, teaching magic and teaching more complex tricks than the ones that I thought. And yet I got an enormous amount of hate from that one specific video. And I had to go through all the motions of, figuring out what to do following that situation. But yeah, I still think maybe people have a defined notion of who I am and like what I should be doing. And a lot of the comments were like, this channel is for professional magicians. Like, you need to keep doing those reviews and like giving. So I'm helping everyone. But when it comes to like beginners or giving entry level stuff or like teaching easy training, like, don't do that. You're not allowed. Like,
it's so strange. We talk about it all the time, companies that offer, hey, give me your email and here's 3 free tricks. But posting it on YouTube is problematic. Like, I'm confused where lines are drawn, like somebody who is interested, who searches to learn how a magic trick works, like, you can find it for free in a lot of places, and some of them are frowned upon and some of them aren't. Like, it's pretty confusing. A library is fine, but a YouTube video, you understand what I mean? Like, so there's a lot of people, exactly like you said, passing judgment about it. And I think, obviously, let's talk about some of the obvious parts here. Like, if somebody creates a trick, a marketed effect that they're selling right now, to expose that or to try to give or sell or make your own version of it and publicly share it and sell it, I think we can all agree that's not all right.
Yeah.
I think, unless you disagree, but I think generally speaking, if like that sucks, I think that really sucks. But to educate people on things that may be 100-year-old tricks that are written in dozens and dozens of locations, an ambitious card, a pass, a double lift, a thumb tip, a false cut, these are things that nobody's livelihood is being won or lost on somebody searching for. And so I'd love to know kind of what you think. I know I'm kind of trying to get us to draw a line somewhere, but what is okay, what isn't okay, or maybe something about how do you feel about it?
I tend to draw the line around what you said. If there's a marketed effect, and especially as someone who helps creators promote their effects through reviews. I mean, sometimes it's a promotion because it's good. Sometimes I say something that it's not a promotion, but I couldn't do that to a creator. I just couldn't do it. And my own things are out there to purchase. So I can understand that and definitely draw a line here. And a lot of even marketed tricks are based on someone else's idea, but the gateway of paying for something seems to make it okay. And that's where I struggle. Like, where do you draw the line? How much crediting do you give? I'm fortunate I have friends that are helping me with crediting when I put something out there now. And even, just the recent lecture that I filmed, my main kind of target was for the folks I was working with is make sure things are cleared. I'm not going to take care of that part, but I expect you to support me on this, and I'll do proper teaching and everything, but I need support on if there's any crediting or permissions to get. But yeah, I would definitely steer away from any marketed effect. But there's a lot of sleight of hand and technique that is only in writing in some sources and putting it in a video format that's easy to understand, I think has a lot of value. But that's where, some people get upset too. So it's very, there's no way to please everyone, and you have to choose a path. In my case, one of the effects that generated the most negativity was the card warp. There's videos of that move that have like a ton of views, and they've been exposed. And when the creator was alive, they were up there, and no one went necessarily against that channel or organization. But yeah, I'm posting this. So I think there was a lack of sensitivity on my part because that individual passed away maybe a year ago. So at that point, yeah, maybe I should have looked at the dates a little bit closer and then done a little bit more exercise there. But it's difficult to keep track of everything and everyone. And I work in a very fast workflow when I upload videos, and that worked against me in that sense. But
For
taking
sure.
one day more to just show it to a friend that could give me advice on whether I should publish or not is what I'm trying to implement now to avoid these situations.
And it's tough on every front because it's like, people are offended at many different, scale, many different levels of the benchmark. So you kind of have to be like, okay, this I'm comfortable with, this I'm not comfortable with. I may receive a certain amount of, hate in general, and you kind of have to draw the line. And I agree with what you said. Sometimes to make a video a week for 7 years or whatever, like to be able to do that, you have to be able to, produce content at scale. And that means sometimes, someone else may have to help with your crediting, and sometimes things may not, you may not be able to check what every last thing is. But thank you for talking about this. I know it's kind of a strange thing. Let's talk about the other side of YouTube. Like, share with us some of the amazing things that have been, with respect to YouTube. You have been a core, I would say a core magic creator on YouTube for a long time. Magic, cardistry, reviews. Your stuff comes up. You're part of the YouTube, magic community. And I think that there's just so much incredible things going on with YouTube, no matter where you land on the exposure thing, just in terms of the community and the videos and the sharing and the ideas, which has been really phenomenal. Talk to me about some of the amazing stuff that's been going on.
I would say 99% of my experience with YouTube has been amazing. When there were no travel restrictions, anywhere I would travel because of YouTube, I would meet up with people. I would go out, hang out. I would even do impromptu lectures in that area because they knew I was traveling there. It's been so great because I feel like I've developed these friendships with the folks that continuously comment and we interact, and that community building sense is super important to me. And I get a lot of questions on how do you get started? How do you build a community? And it's some of the advice I try to give is you need to be open and vulnerable and show yourself through these videos. If it's only really business related, and here's a trick. And if people don't learn about you and don't connect to you personally, then it's very difficult to build that community. And also you have to be consistent and actually give value. So for me, it was the kickstart to a lot of my professional shows in the corporate work, because at 16, same year, I mastered that DVD and started to perform. I had that first gig that I pulled through, and they asked to see something from me, and I was able to show a YouTube video, and that became my promotional card. Okay, you want to see something? That's why I went out and I did more and more street magic. Even if I wasn't professionally performing, the fact that I was doing magic on video and was getting these reactions was all that they needed. I didn't need references. I didn't need 10 years of experience. I just needed to show that what I do is entertaining and it's engaging and they should hire me. So multiple times, it was questioned, whether I have enough experience for a gig, especially in the corporate world. It's interesting because from 16 to, I would say 20, I was lying to everyone about my age. And I was like, yeah, I'm totally 25. Don't worry about it. I've done this. And now I'm trying to, say that I'm younger than I am. But yeah, very big corporate clients, and they would pull the trigger based on my videos and the fact that I had content online. So that's super important.
And it's incredible because it obviously it's been a gradual switch between 30 years ago to get booked something. You send a VHS tape in the mail to an agent or something, and now it's pretty important to be able to say, hey, I have an audience, I have content, I have proof that people like it, I know how to make people laugh, I can perform for videos, I can, and having YouTube as a calling card is almost like a resume. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People can search for whatever they want, from street magic to anything. And one of the things that Ben and I are struggling with right now with YouTube, maybe I'll ask is it's very hard to wonder who the audience is, right? Like we want to put on stuff that our clients can see, but then also we want to do stuff that kind of make magicians happy, and share stuff with, magicians, a core part of our community. Should I be worried that my client is going to see me doing like a review, or should I be worried that my magicians are not going to want to see videos that are kind of, promoting me as, to hire me for the company? How do you deal with that kind of thing?
99% of my audience, and it took me time to get to that point where I understood the audience, is going to be magicians. So that's why a lot of my content is geared towards magicians, but I leave 1% out for performances that are uploaded there. I do have some unlisted videos that I only show to clients in my back pocket. So there's not everything. So so my YouTube channel has become over the years more and more and more magician based. But what I find interesting with clients looking me up and finding that content is, one, they see that I've built a community in a niche sector, and understanding how to market to a niche is a very valuable skill. And most companies and brands you work for are not going to be mass brands. They're going to have an industry, a niche. And that's appealing to a client to know that you're, very knowledgeable and respected in that environment. So that doesn't necessarily play against you. They won't watch these videos. They will click off. Like any of my reviews is like, you get through it, like, okay, this is gibberish. I'm gonna tune out. But they understand the value. They see that you're knowledgeable. One of my biggest clients was Coca-Cola, and they found me through YouTube. They found my performance videos, but they were also evaluating other folks for that gig. They were looking to create a commercial, and working with me, they created 4 commercials at the end. But with that one commercial mandate, because they saw that I review magic and that I create magic, and I was able to give them a quote that not only portrayed me as the performer, but also the creator, and I would do all the R&D that they need to get this out. They were confident. So it gave them confidence to work with me. So they didn't hire me because of looks. They didn't hire me because I was, the closest to where they were shooting. They hired me because I was able to demonstrate that I'm knowledgeable in magic, that I'm able to take this gig from A to Z and deliver a commercial.
And, one other thing that I think is falling between the lines, between the cracks here, is that to create and manage and put out a YouTube channel for years, you learn so much about communicating, making videos, making magic, sharing content, shooting, all of these different things that even without intention will probably rub off in these communications and these pitches and, different things like that, because you understand how content works, how shooting works, how making magic works. Like Ben and I, just starting to make stuff for YouTube, we've made so much magic. It's bonkers. Like we have created so much magic in the last couple months just to play. It's been really bonkers, way more than a show, because at the end of the show, like the next show looks kind of like the previous show versus YouTube videos don't really have that. So, we've really had to learn to be creative. And I love what you said there about how that really comes into effect with, audiences. Let's talk a little bit about reviews. I don't really go publicly and say when I don't like something in magic, whether that makes me a chicken or I don't know what it is, but even these podcasts, they're generally focused on neutral or positive, and if it's negative, we're trying to, get to something really positive. And reviews a lot of the times are positive, but I'm very fearful to share, hey, this effect sucks, or something else like that. Talk to me about how your mentality going into sharing reviews of a community that is so small. How do you go into thinking about sharing reviews of projects of your peers?
It's difficult, like you said, because you're in that creator and community and you don't want to necessarily lose friends. But at the same time, if you don't say what you think in this review show, then it will quickly be spotted and you'll be tagged as the biased person and no one will kind of tune in afterwards. So it was very important for credibility purposes that I do say what I really think. even if it could have a negative consequence on my relationship with that individual. But, I don't have too many like super, super close friends in the magic community. With this past year in the pandemic, I've made more of an effort to connect with people because I realized how important it is to maintain these relationships because I wasn't, traveling. But I could count folks on my fingers that are super close. So it's more of it's nothing personal, it's more business. Like business wise, you decided to release this item. I found some flaws in it. I'll highlight them. And hopefully it's constructive. And then the next items that individual will release will be improved in some way based on that.
And so first of all, it's incredible that, Magic has that accountability. It always has with things like Magic Cafe and things like that. But just to have, a community, there's a couple of other people at least that are, reviewing items, and it keeps magicians, or at the very least the companies that are putting things out, responsible to not, abuse the monopolies that they have over the magic business. So I definitely, I respect that. What's the spread in terms of how many of the reviews are things like, hey, I seeked out reviewing this because I love this, and how many of the reviews are, I seeked out reviewing this because I don't like this, and maybe how many of them are, I don't know what the heck I'm looking at, maybe I'll like this, maybe I don't. How do like for me, for example, when people go on the podcast, it's all people who I had a positive experience with or looked up to or whatever. And I'm like, I want to talk to them. I'm never like, if this person rubs me the wrong way, let me talk to them. Right. So talk to me. How do you decide what projects to be reviewing?
There's a combination of items that I look at. So there's items that I personally go out there and buy just based on curiosity, not necessarily for the purpose of reviewing it, but just an item is released. And I'm like, okay, I just need to buy it and take a look at it. And often those items are big items. And that's when a lot of my negative reviews came out, because I was personally, as a consumer, disappointed to have spent my own money on something that doesn't really function the way it should. And that's when a negative review usually comes out. Sometimes it's folks sending stuff to me. And it used to be in the past, magic companies sending me stuff directly versus the creator. So I try to limit companies sending me things because they will always send something that they want to promote without looking at necessarily what is my personal interest. Am I going to like this effect? And I'll give you an example of a review that I'm probably going to release this week, but whenever you guys see this, probably will be already on YouTube. So the product is Hollywood by Hansen Shin. And we had an exchange on Instagram, and they're like, here's the product. Would you like to review it? So I appreciate now people asking me before I get the item, would I want to review it or not? So a lot of my latest reviews have been more on the positive side because I get to make that decision early on, but sometimes still make the decision and still get disappointed. But for that item specifically, I was actually trying to convince them not to send it to me. I'm like, it's not 100% like the type of magic I would perform. But they're like, no, but it's really neat item. I think you would appreciate the build, like, give it a shot kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, send it over to me. And so I've reviewed it, and I think it's a beautiful piece of magic. Not something I'll be performing because, again, it doesn't fit anywhere in my performance, but I don't know, maybe there's a special somewhere and it will fit eventually. But I do respect the prop, and it's well built. And it's like they said, I would be impressed with the mechanism and the working. So I was able to share that in that review. But in most cases, I get creators reach out to me, whether it's by DM on Instagram or through my email, and ask me first whether this fits, or I know they would have watched my videos. And for instance, I love ring magic. So anyone that comes up with something ring magic, they would just like, Ekat, we know you love this. We created this. Can you take a look? And most of the time I say yes. I have to say, when that incident in January happened with a lot of hate being sent my way, it was really difficult to say yes to people and to
the card warp incident?
Exactly. So after that incident, I'm like, do I black out and not post for a while? Like, do I take a break? How do I deal with this? And I had decided, and to be honest, I've even considered like whether I should just stop creating stuff for magicians because of my disappointment with how the community reacted. And And I forced myself that week to say yes to items, because I know that if I say yes, I've given my commitment to that creator and I'm going to review their effect. So I now as well, like there's been so many times where I question myself and I ask myself, when do I stop reviewing magic? When is my number that I would have reached? Because I don't review items for myself anymore. If I need something, I can just go ahead and buy it. You know, it's not a financial burden to purchase something that I'll use and get paid for. But it's actually more of a financial burden to keep producing content, investing time in it, and then receiving the type of feedback that I had received at that time. Because I could start a completely different YouTube channel, not targeted to magicians, and use all my skills and like go into a different niche, and probably that would have more of a following than magic. So that's still like in my thoughts. Like, should I develop something outside of magic and use all the skills that I have in content creation for something else? Because at the end,
think about what Andre Gic did.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. That's an amazing example.
What a perfect example where, like, that guy easily could have had a magic, been doing magic YouTube for a long time, and once every 6 months pissed off a bunch of magicians. That easily could have been what he did, but instead he picked another one of his passions, like finance, Bitcoin, stuff like that, and now he's got a phenomenal YouTube channel. And the fact that he does magic is,
it's that eye candy. Yeah, it's that special something.
It's beautiful. By the way, not that I'm trying to convince you to stop, because I do love your videos and I don't think that you should stop. And I'll also share that, like, yeah, it is crazy that, as a content creator, it does happen where, like, you can be right 99% of the time, and then 1%, and people are like, you're canceled and you're like, for what? For teaching people how to do like a basic trick? Like, it doesn't even make any sense, so it's very frustrating. And I know many creators, as you do, especially in the YouTube sphere, that have just threw their hands in the air and said, okay, I'm not going to teach anything anymore. Like, whatever. It's just not worth it. Like, it's just too bad. Bye. And that sucks, because how many people find magic, learn this stuff from, like, I think that's such a big mistake. So a lot of people are being like, scared out of the industry sometimes.
Yeah, but I felt I needed to keep going in that moment specifically, because like it's part of my character to be fearless in business. And again, maybe it's through all the rejections that I've gotten over the years, but I did learn to ignore all that noise, but it did personally affect me. So I would be lying if it didn't, but you learn to get through it. But I still have in the back of my mind that question: is it sustainable what I'm doing? At what point it will become like too much work for not much result? And the benefit right now is more other people than myself, to be honest with you. So,
as somebody who interviews magicians every week for the past 5 years, I get it, like at some point, and I joke about this all the time with my inner circle, at some point, what advice is there aside from just do it a lot?
Yeah.
And go do it publicly. Like I've interviewed every magician. That's basically the advice, that's basically it. Go do it a lot, get feedback, work hard, that's basically it. I know I'm oversimplifying it, but, that's it, so how many more magicians are going to tell me that, when I interview them? How many more interviews, about that am I going to do? And I'm sure you feel similarly with reviews, like how many more times am I going to do this until I'm just like, okay, this was my last review. I'm going to go spend my effort and time on something else, that is, exciting or not. I'll ask you a question specifically about reviews. Mm-hmm. When a project comes to you, do you not look at it until you decide to do it and then you must obviously engage with it in some way before you choose to review it? And what happens when you click on a project and you watch the video and it's not good? Like, do you think to yourself, I don't want to touch this because it's really bad? Or do you think to yourself like, hey, there's so much to talk about here. This is, a project that is like full of, this could be a 25 minutes of me sharing so much. What you said earlier about like you giving an honest review allows people to understand your character and your point of view. And if you say you like something that is crap, then people will not trust you talking about things. So like I could do 30 minutes on a horrible trick, but I don't have that much to say about a really great trick sometimes. So what happens? How do you decide if something is bad to actually talk about it or something else like that? What do you like feel when projects come across your plate like that?
So there's a good example just recently, and I should probably respond to that creator because I've been a bit ignoring him, but not a very known creator. And I love when that happens, when not very known folks send me stuff and I get to give them some visibility to their work. But there's this one creator, and even if you ask me now, like, what's his name, I wouldn't know. I have to go back in my email. So it's to that point, I don't really know him, or he's not really known also. But he created, I think, a neat effect for virtual magic where he's able to do a prediction with his phone, but it must be Android. And I'm on an iOS kind of ecosystem. Everything is Apple when it comes to my stuff. So my criteria was like, if I can't test it out and perform it, because there's a lot of reviewers out there and I think they're great. One of my favorite ones is David from Magic Orthodoxy. But because of the amount of reviews he puts out there, he doesn't get a chance to necessarily, demo them. So there's no demonstration, or he doesn't personally necessarily play with it. Whereas I need to be able to test it out. That's like one of my criteria, because if I test it out, and there's some effects where you don't see it, but basically it's a pen going through the card. And when I got it, I really didn't like it. I didn't like what it looks like. Now I'm going to share with you what it looks like. People don't see it, but I thought it was really odd, as a product. And you would never perform this live, but virtually you would perform it. But I posted it on Instagram. I shared it with some magicians and they loved it and their reaction was good. So I'm like, okay, I personally just physically don't like what it looks like, but the reaction is good. So I'm not going to trash this effect necessarily. I say trash in quotations here is how people interpret negative reviews, but the purpose is not to do that, obviously. So with coming back to that item, I asked him, do you have an iOS version? I think most people are on iOS. It's going to be very difficult for me to review or test it out. And in your explanation, you don't even mention, like, what do you do if you don't have an Android? And he mentioned, there is a workaround. Here's the workaround link. So there was a whole workaround that he shared with me that wasn't part of the instructions. At that point, I chose not to review it. And maybe I'll invite him on my channel to talk about it, because I do think the effect is good. It's just explanation is bad. You add like items afterwards. I'm super confused as someone who's trying to learn this. There's nothing,
and it's only on Android.
And it's like, so, but I mean, again, he will say there's a workaround, but that workaround is diminishing the effect. So at the end, I could technically make a negative review about this and say it's not available on iOS. The explanations are not clear. I'm super confused about this effect. But if watching his trailer and him performing it, he's getting really good reactions. So I'm sometimes torn between those type of effects, and then I choose to like not do anything about it because I don't have full clarity, because I can't really put my finger on what to say in this situation because I haven't tested it out. I don't really want to spend more time in that, but I still keep the creator behind my back. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I want him to have a platform and to say something, but I just don't know how to introduce him yet. And maybe it's him having to refilm the whole thing, which is maybe not worth it for him.
Right.
So there's other reviews I have a lot of clarity. I received the product. It's marketed by a big company. And it's just, that's what went to market. So it's not a small creator who doesn't really know what he's doing, could use some advice. It's really fully marketed. It's out there. This is the effect. So at that point, I have full clarity on what to do. And if in the, let's say, trailer, it wasn't clear that it wasn't, iOS, then I would mention this doesn't work for me because it's not iOS, or this, So really case by case, you could argue that, I do some favoritism towards smaller creators and give them more of a chance.
But that's probably okay. Like the people that don't have the R&D machine get a little bit more sympathy than the people that maybe do. But it is interesting just where to kind of draw the line about how much to share. If a product doesn't work on so many fronts, is it best to talk about it or not to talk about it? So,
another example I have is from the guys from the color changing cards project. I don't know if you know this one, but I mean, I'm going to show it to you. You know, the color changing cards. So you have that, and then it switches.
yes.
So they've made a torn and restored gimmick too. I let's say exposed the gimmick in a way by showing a different application of not using it as a torn and restored card, but just using it as a production card. You know, I feel bad a little bit for the company because they received a few negative emails afterwards from some customers complaining about the review that I had made. Because I don't send my review to the company or the creator to like, hey, what do you think? You know, I send it to, sometimes I send it externally to a friend that's not related to the project just to get a second opinion, whether I'm too harsh or whether I'm completely off. But I don't share it often with the creator themselves because then they will feed changes to me. And then again, that could create a bias in the review. So at that point, I gave it a good review, but because I showed a different application, it still created some negativity, I guess, for the item, which, but at that point, it was just black and white. I asked, would you want me to take the review down? At this point, I will accept that. No problem. It's not for me, you know. It's more for you. And they mentioned, no, keep the review up, just letting you know in case that negativity goes over, because we know what happened in the past. So I appreciate those heads up. It's definitely interesting, but you never know. I could be saying something good, but because of how I'm handling the product, or maybe handling it too much or saying too much, those who have purchased the effect feel a little bit cheated because they paid for the secret.
The last question I wanted to ask about YouTube is kind of strange, but there is an overlap between YouTube, Magic, and Montreal. There's a lot of Magic and YouTube going on with an amazing community in Montreal that have just been really supportive of each other and have just done phenomenal things. And I think that a lot of times we look at creators and we think that they're going at it alone, and then sometimes we zoom out and we realize, there is a phenomenal community here that are helping everybody with the ropes of this whole thing. So can you talk a little bit about the Montreal Magic YouTube community?
Yeah, it's really amazing how much talent is concentrated near me. There is the obvious one, Chris Ramsey. Obviously, not so far away. Could drive half an hour and be in his area. And the same way, like when there used to be a lot of magic lectures, magic jams, we would all hang out in either one of our houses or at a restaurant or a bar. Spidey has been, I feel, the key promoter of these jams and hangouts, and that's how I became close friends with him. I mean, we've known each other for years, but he's really been the one that kind of invited me into his world and like, hey, come hang out. And it's been really great. He's the reason why I learned about you guys and I knew about you guys, but why you got me into that unconventional fun event. He's like, I really love this. You need to be there. I'm like, sure. So I don't even question whenever Spidey says something. It's like, it must be 100% worth my time. So yeah, so he's really, really been good at hospitality and opening his house and having us all hang out, whether it's at his place or again, another location. But we don't necessarily just jam and do magic and film together. We also play for hours, like werewolf and other games. There's a lot of just friendship building kind of activities, or someone would cook. So it's really nice. The newer folks on the block, and I mean, not new because I know Bao for years. I knew him when he was a kid. So he's really, taking an amazing approach through TikTok to now YouTube, and amazing creator from Montreal to watch out. Yeah. So I think I'm really closer to Spidey, and he's literally the closest one to me because he's 10 minutes drive away. So we used to hang out all the time. Now with the pandemic, we're a bit more careful. I'm hoping I owe him a book I received that I need to give to him. But he's like, you're not a delivery truck. Like, give it to me when we're able to hang out. Yeah, no, he's been really great. I think in Montreal, what I like is the diversity, and we really feel like because we have great examples already within our community that it's possible. Like, you start in the middle of nowhere. I don't know, I'm saying middle of nowhere, but there's a lot of younger creators in maybe less developed countries that find it a little bit harder to get started and like get the equipment. So I do feel like we are also in a favorable environment where internet is accessible, technology is there, your phone is a great camera. So there's really less boundaries to get started. And we just inspire each other. And every time I meet up with anyone locally that does a lot of content creation, we all motivate each other to keep going. Like there was so many times, and again, that I would question, keep going. And I would always get a kick from someone like, hey, you're part of this community. We have to keep going. We have to do this. When are you filming your next video? And kind of keeping each other motivated. And that's probably a long-winded answer, but I really love the guys that are around me, and they've really been supportive. And that's kind of the folks I also can count on my 10 fingers that have been part of my journey and will, even if I'm not in magic, at some point in life, I know these people will be part of my life.
By the way, that's incredible. And it's really wonderful to hear that, it is such a phenomenal community, in person as it is online. And like you said, there's just absolute powerhouses coming out of Montreal, creating. And I will say both, all four people that you mentioned, but everybody has really spent a lot of time giving of themselves to, the internet, and specifically to the, beginner, like that people helped people who are struggling on the internet, not with the advanced things, maybe a little bit, but that have spent a lot of time helping people get into this, Spidey does that a ton, and he makes it really easy. Bao does it as well. He makes it as simple as possible. And, it's just phenomenal that people are giving and sharing. And like I said at the beginning of this thing, everybody who has been in magic in the last 20 years, YouTube has played a role in it. And it's just phenomenal to see an incredible community of creators next door. And we're trying here in Toronto. We're trying. Although you guys stole Wes Barker. So he was like we got him from...
Yeah, that's crazy. He's like Chris's neighbor now. I've been checking his videos.
I know. Yeah. We got him from Vancouver. We only had him for a bit and then he left. But we have Sankey. So that's hard to beat. That's really, really phenomenal. One thing I wanted to ask you about is, we've talked about, marketing, you had a full-time job for a long time as well on top of magic. And you've also talked about working with companies doing gigs, but also it sounds like doing more unique things, the Coca-Cola project, some of the other projects have been unique. And I think that aside from just financially, fun wise for magicians, I think a lot of us don't, myself included, don't take a risk to do something for the very first time for a client that has maybe not been done before. It usually pays better, is more fun, is more interesting, is more exciting. The client's happier and we're happier. But most of the time we just sell like our show, and I think there is room, especially what we all just witnessed in the last 18 months. Magic as a tool can be so effective in more places than just your people will sit in the banquet hall and the magician will go on stage and, do 30 minutes or whatever the case may be. So can you talk a little bit about, how you approach it, how you think about it in working with companies and doing things that are maybe more creative than a show, or do those kind of instances tend to just come to you because of the content that you're putting out in the world? Talk to me about how you think about this stuff.
I think it's a mix of both. But most of my approach is pull marketing. So I want to attract certain companies, and that's the companies I go after. And I really feel like the role of marketing is to generate demand, and the role of sales is to generate revenue. So there are, like, for instance, when you're selling a show, you're in a selling mode. You're there, you need to sell, and you have this formula, and you go ahead, or you put out ads, or you have an agent making calls. But my role, since I have to play both marketing and sales, I chose the marketing side, and although I still represent myself on the sales side, I decided that I need to generate demand for certain things. And I've really invested, especially after the Coca-Cola gig, I've invested a lot of that money in equipment and video equipment and educating myself on editing and the best practices. And I follow a lot of YouTube channels that talk about video production and content creation, a lot more than magic, actually. So a lot of my time is spent to upskill myself in becoming a better content creator. And that's become really important in my value proposition. Like, I just did a gig not long ago for Valmont Cosmetics, their luxury brand. We decided together that it was best for that show to have a deck of cards that custom to them produce. Because again, that whole idea of luxury is personalization. You'll have your brand everywhere. So all the team members of theirs, like marketing and sales, will receive a deck of cards. And then they had this book that was used. It's a book that spoke about, reigniting kind of retail after the pandemic, because they have retail locations. So I told them, you send that book to everyone, also send it to me. And I performed booked, using that book. So I just really kind of invest a lot of time in that introduction, understanding how I can help them, how I can personalize, how I can tell them how to run that event in a way that's going to be more impactful. And so I mentioned also, okay, what is like one of the things that you're trying to do with your sales folks? And it's a lot around having them engage on Instagram, because the whole social selling is really big. So I'm like, okay, great. So then let me make a video for Instagram. That's one of my Instagram videos. You'll see the Valmont brand there. So I proposed that. I'm like, I can do that. I can create that video. It's going to have a prediction in the caption. Then it's going to tie in with this. It's going to tie in with that. I'm going to send this. So I try to create the event with them versus just saying, I have a set formula and I can do that and repeat that pretty consistently. So there's risk that they take in that. And for me, it's harder to be consistent. Some things that I try fail, but as long as the majority of the tricks work, I'm okay with like one trick failing, or so I'm quite open to taking risk, magically speaking. And there's also the risk virtually of something tech-wise not working, which luckily hasn't happened yet, but I'm always waiting for that day where I have to switch my camera off and have my iPhone film me. But yeah, I really enjoy personalizing, co-creating. And obviously you can imagine how much I charge is different when it comes to that level of personalization versus the alternative. But not everyone wants that. Some people just want a very cost-effective solution. And I am not that. So that's why I really love having different revenue streams. I don't like to call it like a 9-to-5, because I don't have a 9-to-5. I just work all the time. But I love diversifying, because that allows me that flexibility to know who I'm going after and what I'm trying to create as that demand. So I go after companies and I help them create content, and I talk with them about branding, but I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't have also a marketing background. So it all comes together. It's just the barrier to entry for marketing is so small that I don't find it's a unique enough angle, because I could have just, kind of forgotten about the magic part and just given talks about marketing and how companies can elevate, what they're doing through digital channels. But I really feel magic plays a unique role for me in everything I do marketing related. So yeah, it's kind of like when I chatted with Andre G, trying to make his name more English, but it's Andre. So he was really excited about finance, and every time I talked to him, he was like, "Yeah, I love finance. You should invest." Like it was part of what he loved to do. The same way I love, content creation and marketing. But in his case, when he created the channel, he married his ability to do video production, create content, his love for finance, and magic at the end. So I don't know. I hope I can marry the three better in what I'm doing. And a lot of people don't see the business side of me because professional magicians, they don't always like the business side. I notice, like, I'm saying professional magicians, but even amateur magicians, it's like, okay, I'm the creator, I'm the performer. I don't want to know about the business side of things necessarily. So I noticed that a lot of content that I tested out on my channel that's more like business oriented or marketing oriented doesn't resonate as much as just, okay, well, let me talk about the details of this. And I find that's a bit unfortunate because I find it exciting to talk about marketing and marrying it with content creation and magic. So that's where I'm a bit torn, because I find on that end, I don't connect with the folks that currently follow me. And that's where I'm like, yeah, a second channel is probably warranted. But then I also have my son wanting a YouTube channel, and he's really, into toys and activities and play. So and I can't handle 3 channels. So I really have to choose my battles. But I think companies have, the same needs as basically people. They want attention, they want team building, they want to continue building trust with their folks. So however you can solve their problem, there's many ways of doing that. With video work, and I'm sorry, this is a way longer answer than I planned. With video work, companies tend to ask me to do quick, like, influencer-like things. Like, can you put my product here? Can you do that? And that is very common. So it's something that a lot of influencers do. So I don't know if magicians are scared to go into that influencer realm for things other than magic, but that's where, for instance, Anna Guzman goes. Like I see her wearing lashes. I see her, like, this is very in demand, and influencer marketing isn't going away tomorrow. But magicians are a bit, I feel, scared. And the moment you see like a magician like promoting something that's not magic, it's like, oh, sell out, or what are you doing?
It's wild. It's wild. Sometimes there's a lot of judgment in this community. And I'll ask you a little bit about communities. You spoke about, you started juggling a bit. I don't know if you were in the juggling community, but, the magic community, and there's the YouTube community, and there's the cardistry community as well. And we haven't talked quite a bit about cardistry, but based on the way that things are taught and shared and discussed in magic and in cardistry, the communities have taken shape very, very differently. The way that people operate with each other, communicate with each other, share, don't share, stuff like that. Can you talk a little bit about the cardistry community? How has that been different than exchanging with magicians online?
I discovered cardistry because of YouTube. So I find that magic, yes, close connection to YouTube, but cardistry even more so, because it was so difficult to get into cardistry if you weren't on the YouTube platform, like almost impossible, because it took a while for companies to start release products that were coined, cardistry. And that's something Andrzej actually supported, coining that art form cardistry versus the old form, which was extreme card manipulation or simply card flourishes. So I entered through YouTube, but then to go deeper, I did join the forums, and there was a few forums back in the day, whether it's Handlords for XCM or Technique. That was a really nice forum where us, card enthusiasts came and shared material. There was the main difference is there's a lot more sharing. Someone would learn something or create something, and they would, post a tutorial for everyone else to be able to learn it. There was a lot of sharing. I have so many archives of what I call now underground tutorials, cardistry tutorials from people. And sometimes I resurface them and I get permission, I guess, to teach them. From just creative point of view, cardistry is easier to get into because it's not a secret. It's something you're showing, it's technique you're displaying versus something you're trying to hide, like a pass. You don't want ever someone see the mechanics of a pass versus a flourish or a cardistry move. You want to see how it shapes up, and you want to match it to music. It's a lot more artistic, very close to dance, if you will, a different way to express yourself as an artist. So I was attracted to the art form because I felt it helped also build my dexterity when it came to learning slides and magic. So it's a lot easier. That's why reviewing things and being able to demo them quickly is only possible for me because I have the dexterity that came from cardistry. And cardistry was easy for me to get to because of the juggling pre-work that I've done as well. So you mentioned that. But I never knew the juggling community really. But there was one quick note on juggling. There was one magician that spoke about juggling in one of the lectures that I witnessed. And unfortunately, I don't remember the magician, but he was from Germany. And in the lecture, he asked, who can juggle? And, a lot of people raised their hands. So it seems to be something common, like magicians can juggle for the most part. I don't know why. And then he's like, okay, so go ahead. So how many balls can you juggle, for instance, 3 or 4? Okay. Then he would give you one more than what you can juggle. Then we did the exercise, and then obviously something falls down. And he said, be happy when you lose. So a ball falls. How do you react to it? And on purposely, I gave you more so that something would fall. So how do you react to it? So I find cardistry is very similar because you always drop cards when you, like, if you're actually performing to people, or like, even if you're doing magic, cards may fall. So how do you react to something that doesn't work in something that's highly technical, that involves dexterity? And so he said, be happy when that happens. Be happy when you lose. And it's translated a lot into my work in business meetings, because sometimes, you get a question you don't have to answer, or you're challenged. And the moment your face shows that you're frustrated or scared, or like, people don't want to hear what you have to say next. So people won't want you to see you try again, pick up the ball and keep going. People won't want to do that because you're not happy, and it's really causing you some pain, and they can see you're suffering. So they'll be like, okay, it's okay. Let's move on. So I've had a lot of things fail, obviously, on stage. And I've always used that mindset that I learned from juggling, that you will always drop something, but it's how you react to it. And so not a lot of people do cardistry live. And I was probably one of the first folks to actually take it to stage. Now I don't do it so much on stage anymore because I do it more for myself. And I learned that people are more attracted to the video flashy editing style versus actually someone doing it on stage. So I rather just stick to magic when I perform live. But cardistry is just such a beautiful art form, and it requires a lot of dexterity. And you often get into this art form because you like it and you just want to do it for yourself versus you want to make money out of doing it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think that it's been really, really fun to watch over the last 10, 20 years, watch the cardistry community create, just become and exist, and all the amazing people in the community and the amazing ways that they're sharing. And even now, I still feel like where, I've dabbled, I know cardist, I'm not really all that new, but I still feel incredibly new, in this field. Everything I want to touch in cardistry says beginner, how to, first, I'm still working on something that I learned, a month and a half ago at the convention. So, it's just amazing watching how much it's grown. And as well, something that you shared, the overlap of cardistry and YouTube and just cardistry and content creation, has been really phenomenal because, like you said, it lives mostly online. Like, people hang out in person, maybe jam cardistry, whatever, but performing of cardistry is not that much of a thing yet, but online it is. And it's really incredible to see what it looks like online. And I've seen, when you ever hang out and see someone do cardistry in person, it's incredible, because you've only seen it online. The last thing I want to ask you about is about authenticity. You shared a lot about marketing, about what you've learned about putting content online. And I think a lot of people put on the internet They try to, really get really specific sometimes. And I've even expressed in this the fear of having a page about one thing and sharing something that's a little bit different, or having a thought about one thing and sharing a style that's a little bit different. And I think that you are unabashedly you on your channel. You're very obviously, a mom. You very obviously have a son. Like, there's no secrets. You're not showing just one little part of what's going on. And I think people really resonate with the authenticity. And I think it plays a big role right now. People's bullshit meters are really good in 2021, So talk to me a little bit about how authenticity plays a role in content creation, because it is harder to let your shoulders down, be the real version of you talking to a camera, and not the camera version of you, and you show only the things that people really, really should see. So talk to me a little bit about how authenticity plays a role.
I appreciate that comment that you were able to see through some of my videos and get a glimpse of my personality. But if you watch some of my older videos, I till this day cringe, because you could see me being a bit uncomfortable, speaking too quickly, or like you could really see I'm trying to get into maybe a character, or really like maybe still lack of comfort in front of the camera. And it's by way of doing it and doing it over and over again that the only way you can sustain doing that is if it's closer and closer to who you are, because there's only for so long that you can pretend to be someone else, I think. So, but in my case, it was just by lack of experience, by lack of discovering who I am, what's my style. I tried to adapt a character that people would say, like, you really should do that because that's, that will sell more. Or at the end, I was just like, no, my style is going to be extension of myself. So and also I'm not necessarily performing these videos when I do a review, like I'm not performing. So why should I take on a performing persona? And if you see me perform, you'll see that, the way I speak is a little bit more, volume, and I'm trying to be a bit more engaging than, to camera, because it looks really awkward on camera if you try too much. But sometimes in certain settings, physically, you have to be a bit the louder person, because otherwise you're not going to necessarily get everyone on board. So I decided that I just wanted to be closer to how I am in the day-to-day. And some people liked it, some people didn't like it. I get comments till this day, like if I'm not dressed up enough in my video, or if my hair is not done, or if I'm wearing a cap, I would get a comment about it. Like, and I think this is just because I'm a girl, but people tend to have a certain image of me, or maybe they saw me on TV and I was wearing a certain thing. And like, it still happens, but those are the kind of comments that I really don't mind ignoring, because they don't attack me necessarily, like personally, like what I've said or done. It's more like what I look like, which with time, everyone's going to get older. So we just kind of have to be comfortable with who we are.
Let me ask another question about this, because you've been now, you've been on TV, you've been on Fool Us, you've been on all over YouTube, you've been in videos that have, been viral, you've had positive comments, you have negative comments. And, sometimes the negative comments is a problem. And we've spoken about that quite a bit in this. And when our stuff gets kind of shared to the internet, people can be ruthless. And we've talked about, like, do you keep going? Do you stop? How do you feel if you post a video and even if 90 comments are positive and 3 are negative, but they sting and you're like, ugh, I don't want to do this. Talk a little bit about overcoming that obstacle. I think we all are going to face roadblocks in everything, in life, but something special about sharing content to the masses, where there is a lot of positivity. Let's not confuse how amazing content creating is, because there is phenomenal community of people that come to support and be wonderful. And then also there's a lot of negativity as well. And sometimes it can hurt because we're putting out our authentic self. Can you talk a little bit about how to deal with that?
I think anytime you put yourself out there, you're going to have to get rejection. So I consider these negative comments like those individuals kind of rejecting you or that content, which is fine. What I find interesting though in folks that do take the time to negatively comment is there must have been still something that pushed them to write that comment. And that's something that used to bother me. Because I'm like, they are so offended that they needed to write it out. Or let's say you go to a restaurant and you really hated it and you write a negative review. There must have been something that really prompted you to write that negative review. So in the beginning, I tried to understand the reason why. And now I don't really go deeper than just, it's words, and different people have different interpretation of words. So it's still difficult. You're still going to feel offended by some of the comments, and it's still going to affect you. I would argue, like, there was a situation not long ago where I had to restructure my team and like part ways with someone in my marketing gig, and then someone asked me a question about it in the team, and they're like, how do you feel? Like, it's just, do you just do that and like, you're okay? I'm like, I would be concerned if I didn't feel something. Like, you feel bad, like same way. Like, I think you could build a thicker skin, but it's human to feel something, whether it's a comment or an action you have to do that's a bit negative or whatever. Yeah, so I don't want to stop feeling, and because that removes the human side. But I think there's a way that, to kind of move forward and not take personally and embrace that rejection, because in some ways it means you're on the right path. In other ways, it just means that who is not your audience. In this case, you don't really focus and tailor your content to those folks. Because, it could get you, but you just have to remember that's not your audience. And yeah.
I love that advice. I think we put our stuff out in the world, and it reminds me of, I don't know where this advice came from, maybe Inside of Magic or outside, I don't remember, but it's like, a good artist listens to everyone's advice and takes none of it. And I think it's kind of what it's like, right? Is you have to know, you have to read the comments. That's how you understand how your things are received. If somebody feels something negatively, you can't just say to yourself, their loss, every time. At some point you have to maybe say, am I doing something wrong? Are they doing something? You have to think about it. You have to feel, and by the same token, you maybe have to say, my content is not me. My content is not my identity. Someone not liking something that I do is totally fine and okay. And I want to know, so, and there's something to striking that balance.
Exactly. No, I think you're right. I wouldn't shut down those comments or make it that no one could leave a comment on my videos. I think that two-way conversation, that feedback is super important, but it's just not going crazy and starting to interpret every single one of them. When it becomes too crazy though, like let's say swearing or things like that, I do tend to remove it. And on my channels, the way that I explain it, it's my platform. I have younger folks. I have like folks that are offended by, swearing. So as long as it's like, it doesn't go into, profanity, I keep the comments and whatever. And sometimes there's a good interaction between my subscribers on those comments. And I can see that some topics are more engaging than others for folks. And people come to your defense in a lot of them. So I kind of let the community filter itself, but I do read them. Yeah.
And I think that, what you've shared and what we've spoken about is if you really share what you really feel, about a review, or you're really authentic about yourself, who you really are, and you put it out in the world, like, who cares what they think about it? This is what I actually feel. This is what I actually think. So I love that. And I think you share phenomenal. It makes it sound like a lot of people are sharing. They're not, but yeah, sometimes we kind of have to think about this stuff and how we respond to it, especially as the numbers grow bigger, and as we get ourselves out there. I keep saying the last question, but I keep a whole bunch more, and then we have a whole section of last questions. But really, one more is we've spoken about marketing, we've spoken about entrepreneurship. Those are things I'm really passionate about in everything, and I agree with you. I think magicians are afraid of those words. They think sales is evil. They think marketing is something other people do. And I remember when I was a kid, one of the reasons I didn't want to be a magician is because I wanted to do magic, but not everything else. Now it's closer to the opposite. But I know that people really, really do feel that way. Obviously, you have years of experience. If there's one thing you think magicians are doing wrong, marketing, although there's many different ways, there's a lot of right. You're picking your audience, you're trying to, if there's something that you feel like magicians are doing wrong, broadly speaking, does something come to mind?
I would say it's not putting themselves out there, like still not creating content or videos. I think that's a big miss. Like, I don't know. I don't get it if you're not doing that. You just have to start some social channels. Maybe choose one. Like, you don't have to be on all of them. Like, if you really don't like TikTok, okay, don't go on there. But I still find there's resistance, or some folks are like, I'm more of kind of, I do it for myself, or I just want to know the secret. Like, I don't want to perform. But if you seriously want to get into performing and make it a business, like every other business out there, you need a presence online, and that, requires content.
That's great. I think sometimes people try to go, people say to me all the time, they're like, what advice do you have for me to grow my business that isn't like, posting stuff online? That isn't like social media? I don't know. It's tough, tough to find stuff in there. Thank you for that, by the way. And now we are getting to the end of the podcast, and every episode has some questions that we do at the end of every single one. Mm-hmm. And the first is the endless chain. So in order to keep the podcast going on for eternity, each guest is asked to recommend another guest that would be perfect for the show. There's two caveats. The first is that we must have had not interviewed them already. And the second one is you must be able to somehow connect the two of us. Because if you just name David Copperfield or whatever, then it's pretty tough. So who do you think would be a phenomenal guest for this podcast? Maybe someone who I haven't considered, or someone who you may know that other people don't.
Yeah, I love that. Have you interviewed Bao yet?
Not yet.
Bao would be on top of my list because it's really unique what he does with TikTok, and he understood the whole influencer marketing thing. So with his videos with milk, I think he's awesome. I really think you guys should consider him. He's doing a quite unique approach.
The next question in the endless chain is about modern magic. So what's one thing in the world of modern magic that you like, and one thing in the world of modern magic that you don't like?
I really like all the development when it comes to apps, magic apps. At the same time, I think sometimes it's too much, in a sense that, like technology has to evolve, and the more advanced it is, the more it does seem like magic, but people are catching up. So I think the hard part is not to make it cheesy, or to really seamlessly integrate technology into magic. But I love that it's evolving, and a lot of it is thanks to our phones, because they're so accessible and they're so advanced now, and they can do so many things. And I hope to see more seamless integration with technology.
And what's something you don't like with respect to magic right now?
Right now, one thing that I don't like is that there's actually too many things being released right now. Like it's become too much of like a market, like too much based on money, and we just have to release things. So without quality, or like I support, magic and the creators, but I just find that sometimes it's not for the right reasons that a product is coming out, and it's just becoming too much of a machine, if you will. I don't know. I find that a bit negative, and there's way too many items out there. Yeah.
For sure. Wild to see the transformation from the start of this story, which is Illusionist, the first video series, that they put out, to the end where we're, not the end, but, to now where we're like, it's too much content. So it's really interesting. The next thing is the take home point. So people have been listening to us talk about magic for a long time now. they're going to think back to the episode, maybe remember one thing or one big idea. What's the most important thing that you hope magicians take from this episode?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I would say, and it's going to sound cheesy, but like you have to do what you love. Like if you absolutely don't like creating content, then don't create content. Like I'm saying create content, but if you really don't like it, like, yeah, it's hard for you to go against what personally like makes you tick. So try to find a way to marry what you like into your magic. That would be the one thing, I guess.
I love that. Let's talk about plugs. Where can people find you on the internet? I know that you have an upcoming Penguin lecture that is coming out. Talk about where people can find you on the internet and where they can find that. Sure.
So the YouTube channel is definitely the center of where I create content. So you'll find my YouTube channel pretty easily through just searching Ekat Magic or my name. Then there's Instagram. I'm very active in my DMs. So if you want to slide, go ahead. I will answer your questions there. And if you have a product you want me to take a look at, that's also a great way to reach out to me. The Penguin Magic Lecture, I'm not sure the exact date, but it's coming soon. And what I love about that project is we were talking about doing this in person, but throughout the pandemic, the borders were closed between US and Canada. It was physically impossible for me to smoothly go there. I mean, now it's going to reopen soon, but we decided to go the route of filming it virtually. I have all the equipment in a studio set up. It was just the perfect timing to do something remotely. So we filmed a ton of content, like a lot of content. And it summarizes a lot of my items also that I sell. And I've been selling a few things like layers, which is my signature card trick, for a few years now. But I've taken out what I like the best and put that in the lecture so you don't have to go through. I'm curating basically what I love from my original content, from semi-original content, and then from content that's not original, to which I have credit and support from the team at Penguin. So that's going to be exciting. And just keep in touch. That's a big lesson for me in this year of pandemic. It's important to keep in touch. So if you guys want to reach out, don't hesitate.
DMs are open. They are open.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Ekat. Thank you for joining us and talking about so much, under the sun, with respect to magic, content, YouTube, lots of it. It's been a ton of fun. You did an amazing job at the last Unconventional, and I think we're going to see you at the next one happening at the end of August. So super, super pumped.
Would love to join.
Well, there you have it. I hope you liked the episode, and I hope, of course, that you learned something. As always, if you learned something, if you like it, please spread the word, tell a friend. It means the world. It's also the only way that podcasts share. It's not like there's like big, giant places that you can share pod. It doesn't really exist. So if you share it, it means the world. That's number one. Number two, if you think somebody specific should know about this, then you should let them know, because that's the only way that we can spread the word, by you telling friends. Thanks for being here. Thanks for spreading the word, and I'll see you next Thursday. Peace.